I used to think home meant safety, laughter, warmth, and the smell of evening soup rising from the kitchen. But in Madame Felicia's house, home was a battlefield, and I was the enemy. She was my late father's second wife, and after he died, she turned me into her house girl. Every morning before the cock crowed, she would bang on my door with her broom, shouting, "Lazy girl, you want to sleep till Judgment Day?" I would scramble out of bed, my eyes heavy, my back aching from the hard mat. The cold harmattan breeze cut through my thin wrapper as I fetched water from the well. Sometimes I prayed quietly while drawing the bucket up, whispering, "God, if you see me, please don't forget me." But even my prayers sounded like whispers in a storm. By the time the sun rose, Madame Felicia would already be in the compound, her hands on her waist, barking orders. "Amarachi, have you washed my clothes? Don't forget the pepper soup I told you to prepare for my guests this evening." She always called me that useless girl whenever visitors came. Her daughter, Chinyere, was treated like a queen, soft hands, fine dresses, and a loud mouth that never stopped mocking me. One evening, after serving them dinner, I sat behind the house, resting my tired feet. The stars blinked faintly in the sky, like weak candles. I was too exhausted to cry, but my heart felt heavy, like a stone pressing against my chest. That was when Madame Felicia came to me with a strange smile, the kind she only wore when trouble was near. "Amarachi," she said softly, folding her arms, "you are now a big girl. It's time you become a wife." I blinked, confused. "A wife? To whom, ma?" "To a man who is ready to marry you," she replied, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "His name is Obinna. He's a good man. Hardworking, you'll be happy." For a moment, my heart fluttered. Maybe God had finally remembered me. But my joy faded when Chinyere burst into laughter from the veranda. "Ma, tell her the truth, Jor. That man is a drunk. He sleeps under the mango tree by the junction." Madame Felicia shot her a warning look, then turned to me. "Don't mind her. Obinna only drinks small, but he has promised to take care of you. Besides, I can't keep feeding you forever. You're a burden." I felt my throat tighten. "Please, ma, I'm not ready for marriage." Her face hardened instantly. "You will marry him, Amarachi. You think I'll waste more food on you? By next week, you'll be his wife. End of discussion." That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the cracked ceiling and wondered what kind of man sleeps by the roadside. Still, a small part of me hoped he might be kind. Maybe, just maybe, life outside Madame Felicia's house would be better, even if it meant being the wife of a poor drunkard. I didn't know it then, but that decision would change my life forever. The morning I was to meet Obinna, the sun rose slow and heavy, as if even the heavens pitied me. Madame Felicia made me wear one of Chinyere's old gowns, a faded blue one with a torn hem and missing button. "No need to dress fine," she sneered. "It's not as if the man deserves beauty." Chinyere laughed so hard she nearly dropped her cup of pap. My heart raced as we walked toward the junction. The villagers were already up and about, traders shouting, children running barefoot, the air thick with the smell of roasted corn. I followed behind Madame Felicia quietly, my bare feet brushing against the red dust. When we reached the old mango tree by the roadside, I saw him. A man sat slouched on a wooden bench, a half-empty bottle beside him. His clothes were dirty, his beard rough, and his eyes, tired but strangely calm. Madame Felicia nudged me forward like a goat at the market. "That's him," she said loudly. "Your husband." He looked up slowly, his eyes meeting mine. For a moment he didn't speak. Then he gave a small, crooked smile. "So, this is the woman you've chosen to ruin my peace?" His voice was deep but lazy, the kind that carried both pain and mockery. Madame Felicia laughed awkwardly. "Ah, Obinna, you like to joke? Amarachi is a good girl. She will take care of you." Obinna's gaze lingered on me. "Does she know I have nothing? No land, no house, no name worth mentioning." "She knows," My stepmother lied quickly. And she's fine with it. I wanted to speak, to say I wasn't fine, that I didn't even understand what was happening, but my tongue felt heavy. Obinna took another sip from his bottle, then stood. Despite his ragged look, there was something strong in the way he moved, steady, controlled, almost deliberate. "Fine," he said at last. "Let her come if she wishes. But tell her I don't have a bed, and the only roof over my head is the mango tree." Madame Felicia clapped her hands dramatically. "You'll manage, my daughter. You can start a new life. Be grateful." Then, turning to him, she added in a low voice I barely heard, "Make sure she doesn't come back here. I'm done with her." By evening, I found myself sitting beside Obinna under that same mango tree. The air smelled of palm wine and dust. He sat in silence, occasionally glancing at me. Finally, he said, "So, they forced you into this, didn't they?" I swallowed hard. "Yes." He chuckled softly. "Then we have something in common. Life forced me into things too." He leaned back, staring at the darkening sky. "You can leave if you want. I won't stop you." I looked at him, at his tired face, the quiet sadness in his eyes, and something inside me refused to walk away. "I'll stay," I said quietly. He turned, surprised. "Why?" "Because no one has ever stayed for me either." For the first time that day, he smiled, not the mocking kind, but a real one. And under that mango tree, beside a man the world called a useless drunk, I felt a strange calm I hadn't known in years. I didn't understand it then, but something had already begun to change between us. Something small, fragile, and real. Life under the mango tree became my new normal. At first, it felt like punishment. No roof, no proper meals, just dust, noise, and the stares of villagers who laughed whenever they passed. Children pointed and giggled. "See Amarachi? She married the town drunk." Women at the market whispered behind their baskets, shaking their heads as if my life was a lesson for their daughters. Every morning, I swept the ground around the mango tree, washed our few clothes by the stream, and tried to cook with the little I could gather. Obinna rarely spoke. He spent most of his time staring into space, sometimes with a bottle in hand, sometimes humming old songs that made no sense. But despite his silence, I noticed things, small things that didn't fit the picture of a useless drunk. His English, for one, was too clean. When he spoke, even in anger, his words carried weight and precision. His hands, though rough, had faint marks of old scars, not from street fights, but from writing or hard work. And then there were nights when he sat alone, looking at a small wristwatch like it held a secret. One afternoon, while washing clothes by the stream, I overheard two women gossiping nearby. "Did you hear?" one asked. "That drunk Obinna was once a big man in Lagos." The other laughed. "Big man? Abeg, look at him now, smelling of buruku. Maybe his madness made him lose everything." Their words clung to me like soap bubbles that wouldn't burst. Could it be true? Was there more to him than the ragged clothes and drunken laughter? I wanted to ask, but every time I looked at him, his silence warned me not to. That evening, as we shared roasted corn, I gathered the courage. "Obinna," I began softly, "who were you before all this?" He looked at me for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "Before all this? I was someone who trusted too much." He stood up, dusted his trousers, and walked away toward the roadside bar. My question had touched something deep. When he returned later that night, he wasn't drunk, just quiet, almost broken. He sat beside me and whispered, "Don't believe everything you see, Amarachi. The world wears masks." His words echoed in my head long after he fell asleep. That night, I dreamt of him dressed in fine clothes, surrounded by people calling him Chief. When I woke up, I told myself it was just my imagination. Yet, the feeling that my husband was not who he seemed refused to leave me. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, Obinna began talking more. He'd tell me stories, not about himself, but about business, cities, and people with power and greed. Sometimes his voice trembled as if those stories were memories. Other times he'd laugh and say, "You'll see, Amarachi. The world changes when you least expect." I didn't understand him then, but I began to see the kindness behind his roughness. When I fell sick, he cared for me gently, fetching herbs, covering me with his own wrapper. That was when I realized, for the first time in my life, someone saw me as human. The villagers still mocked us, but their words no longer hurt the same way. I was beginning to see something special in the man everyone called a drunkard. Something hidden. Something powerful. It had been nearly 2 months since I left Madame Felicia's house, and though I lived under a mango tree with a man the world mocked, my heart had known more peace than in all the years I spent serving her. But peace, as I would soon learn, never lasts long when your enemies walk the earth. That morning, the air was unusually still. I was rinsing clothes in a plastic basin when I heard familiar footsteps and the sharp clacking of slippers. My heart froze. I didn't need to look up to know that sound. It was Madame Felicia. Her voice followed, cutting through the silence like a blade. "So this is where you've been hiding, Amarachi? Living like a beggar with your useless husband?" I turned slowly, my hands trembling. She stood there in her fine lace wrapper, her face powdered and smug, with Chinyere grinning beside her. The sight of them together made my stomach twist. Obinna was sitting by the tree, quietly whittling a piece of wood. He didn't even look up. "Madame Felicia," I greeted softly, bowing slightly. She scoffed. "Don't greet me, you disgrace. Look at you, dirty, thin, smelling like gutter water. I warned you, didn't I? I told you that you were born to suffer." Her words stung, but I bit my tongue. Then she turned to Obinna, her tone dripping with mockery. "And you, useless man, are you proud? You've turned my late husband's daughter into your maid." Obinna finally looked up. His eyes, calm but sharp, met hers. "She is my wife," he said simply. Madame Felicia laughed harshly. "A drunk sleeping under a tree? Tell me, how do you feed her? With air?" He stood then slowly. Something about the way he straightened his back, the quiet authority in his posture, made even Chinyere stop smiling. "Madam," he said quietly, "life has a way of turning tables. Today you mock me, but remember, you don't know tomorrow." Her expression faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "Nonsense. Tomorrow belongs to those who have money, not to people like you." Before she left, she threw a small bag of Gary at my feet. "Take it," she hissed. "You'll need it when he finally dies of drink." Then she walked off with her daughter, her laughter echoing behind her. I knelt and gathered the spilled Gary silently. My chest burned, but I refused to cry. Obinna came closer and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You don't owe her your tears," he said softly. "People like that measure worth by wealth. One day, they'll learn that peace is the real riches." That night, he was quieter than usual. I noticed him staring at a small phone I had never seen before, sleek, expensive-looking, unlike anything a poor man should own. When he caught me looking, he quickly tucked it away. "Obinna," I whispered, "who are you really?" He turned to me, his expression unreadable. "A man trying to remember who he was," he said. Then he lay down and closed his eyes. But I didn't sleep. My mind raced with questions. Why did Madame Felicia's insults seem to bother him less than they should? Why did his eyes sometimes hold sadness deeper than poverty? Something about him didn't fit the picture of a drunkard. Something big and buried was waiting to surface. It was past midnight when I woke to the sound of footsteps. They were soft but deliberate, crunching the dry leaves around our mango tree. Obinna was no longer lying beside me. My heart began to pound. The night was cold and still, the moon casting long shadows on the ground. I rose quietly, clutching my wrapper around my shoulders, and peered into the darkness. That's when I saw him, Obinna, standing near the old footpath, speaking to a man dressed in a dark suit. The man's car, a black SUV, was parked a little way off, its engine humming quietly. My breath caught in my throat. What business would a drunkard have with someone driving such a car at midnight? I crouched behind a bush, straining to hear their voices. "Sir," the man said in a low, respectful tone, "your brother thinks you're dead. The board has completely taken over your assets. They've even started selling off your properties." "I expected that," Obinna replied calmly, his voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. "Let them enjoy their deceit. When the time is right, I'll return, and they'll face me." "Should I make the call to Lagos?" the man asked. "No," Obinna said firmly. "Not yet. I'm not done here." For a moment, both were silent. Then the suited man bowed slightly, entered his car, and drove off into the night. Obinna stood still for a long time, staring after the car before walking back toward the mango tree. I quickly lay down, pretending to be asleep. My heart raced so loudly I was sure he could hear it. He sat beside me quietly, sighing deeply. Then he whispered almost to himself, "They thought they broke me. But she's teaching me how to feel again." My chest tightened. Did he mean me? The next morning, I acted normal. I fetched water, cooked our breakfast, and tried not to look at him too closely. But my mind was a storm. Who was he really? What board was he talking about? And why did a man who claimed to be poor have people reporting to him like servants? Later that day, I decided to test him. While we sat eating roasted yam, I asked lightly, "Obinna, have you ever been to Lagos?" He looked up sharply, his eyes searching mine. "Why do you ask?" "I just wondered," I said quickly, pretending innocence. "You speak like someone who has seen more than this village." He smiled faintly. "I've seen enough to know money doesn't make anyone better." Then, after a pause, he added, "But Lagos, yes, I know it too well." He didn't say more, but the way his voice dipped, half regret, half nostalgia, told me everything. That night, when he fell asleep, I stared at his face in the moonlight. The lines around his eyes, the small scar under his chin, they didn't belong to a useless drunk. They belonged to someone who had lived, fought, and lost something precious. I realized then that my stepmother's cruelty had unknowingly pushed me into a mystery far greater than either of us could imagine. And somehow, in that mystery, my heart was beginning to find its own strange kind of peace. I couldn't carry the secret any longer. For days after that midnight encounter, my heart beat with questions I dared not ask. I watched Obinna carefully, the way he handled money with quiet calculation, how he avoided certain topics, and how his eyes sometimes clouded over when he thought I wasn't looking. On the fourth evening, as the sun melted into orange over the horizon, I decided I had to know the truth. He was sitting beside the fire, sharpening a small knife, when I spoke. "Obinna," I began softly, "I saw you that night." He froze, the knife slipping slightly from his hand. "What night?" "The night you met that man with the car. I heard everything." He didn't move for a moment. Then he placed the knife down slowly and looked up at me. His face was unreadable, but his voice was calm. "So you were awake?" "Yes," I said, my heart pounding. "And I deserve to know who I'm really living with." Silence stretched between us, broken only by the crackle of firewood. Finally he spoke, his voice low and heavy. "My real name is Obinna Nadazi. I was once the managing director of Nadazi Holdings in Lagos, a company my late father built from the ground up. I had everything people dream of: wealth, influence, a family I thought loved me." He paused, his jaw tightening. "But when my mother died, my younger brother and my fiancée betrayed me. They forged documents, turned my board against me, and made it look like I stole from the company. I lost everything overnight." I gasped softly. "Your own brother?" He nodded. "I trusted him with my life. He took my company, my home, and the woman I was meant to marry. The press called me a fraud, and the shame nearly killed me. I left Lagos, drank myself into numbness, and ended up here, hiding under this tree like a ghost of who I used to be." He turned to me then, his eyes glistening in the firelight. When your stepmother brought you to me, I thought it was another curse. But you, he paused, struggling for words. You're the first person who didn't see me as trash. You made me remember what it feels like to be human. Tears welled in my eyes. I reached out, my fingers brushing his hand. Obinna, you don't belong here. You can rebuild your life. You're not what they said you are. He smiled weakly. Maybe, but I had to know if kindness still existed in this world. If people could still love beyond money. That's why I stayed like this. And Amarachi, you passed the test. I blinked, confused. Test? He looked away, his voice barely a whisper. You'll understand soon. For the first time since I met him, he pulled me close and held me tightly. His embrace was strong but trembling, like a man trying to hold onto something fragile. That night, as I lay beside him, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed every word. I had married a man the world called useless, yet beneath the rags was a billionaire scarred by betrayal. And though I didn't fully understand what he meant by test, I knew one thing for sure. My life was about to change again, and this time, it wouldn't be small. The secret didn't stay buried for long. In a small town like ours, even whispers travel faster than the wind. It began with the car. One bright morning, while I was washing clothes by the stream, a sleek black SUV pulled up beside the mango tree. The same one I'd seen that midnight. Obinna had gone to the market, so I froze, unsure what to do. A tall man stepped out, dressed sharply in a navy blue suit. He looked around before smiling politely. Good morning, madam. Is Chief Obinna around? I blinked. Chief? Yes, Chief Obinna Nadazi. I'm from Lagos. I came to deliver some documents he requested. Before I could reply, two women from the village who had been passing by stopped dead in their tracks. Their mouths fell open. One whispered, Chief? The other gasped, You mean that drunkard under the mango tree? The man frowned. Drunkard? Madam, Chief Obinna is one of the richest men in Lagos. Are we talking about the same person? By the time Obinna returned, the news had already spread. The village buzzed like a disturbed beehive. Everyone wanted to see the drunkard billionaire. Children followed him, chanting his name. Women who once mocked me now smiled sweetly, calling me Madam Amarachi. Obinna said nothing. He only sighed and walked into our small hut, shutting the door behind him. That evening, he sat in silence for a long time. I could tell he wasn't happy. So it's out, he said finally. I nodded. Yes. The whole village knows. He rubbed his temples. I wanted to tell you myself, not like this. It doesn't matter, I said softly. The truth had to come out someday. He smiled faintly, but his eyes were distant. You don't understand, Amarachi. Power attracts darkness. They'll come for me now, the same people who destroyed my life. Before I could ask what he meant, a familiar voice rang out from outside. Amarachi, so it's true. Madame Felicia stormed into the compound like a hurricane, dressed in her finest lace and gold head tie. Behind her trailed chignon, her eyes wide with greed. My daughter, Madame Felicia began dramatically, why didn't you tell me your husband was a big man? You've been hiding riches while I suffer? Obinna rose slowly, his expression unreadable. Madame Felicia, what brings you here? She smiled nervously. My in-law. Don't be angry. I was only joking before. You see, I love Amarachi like my own child. I stared at her in disbelief. You threw me out like garbage. Forget that one, my daughter, she said quickly. We all make mistakes. Let's start afresh. You and your husband should move into my compound until you find a better place. Obinna chuckled, a low, humorless sound. You insulted me when I had nothing. Now you want to share in what you didn't build. You may leave, madam. Her face tightened. Are you chasing me away? I'm only asking you to treat my wife with the respect she deserves, he replied firmly. For a moment, She was speechless. Then, with a hiss, she grabbed Chinyer's hand. "Let's go. But remember, money can disappear faster than it came." They stormed off, muttering curses under their breath. When the dust settled, Obinna turned to me and smiled sadly. "Now the world sees my face again. But wealth without peace means nothing, Amarachi. You gave me peace before you even knew my name." I looked at him, my heart full. "Then let's start again, this time without secrets." He nodded slowly. "Yes. But starting again means facing everything I ran from. Tomorrow we go back to Lagos." I stared at him, stunned. "Lagos?" "Yes," he said quietly. "It's time to take back what's mine." The morning we left the village, the air was thick with dust and disbelief. Everyone gathered by the roadside, watching as the same black SUV that once shocked them now waited for us. Some smiled out of guilt, others out of curiosity. Madame Felicia stood in the crowd too, her expression stiff. She didn't speak, but I saw the regret in her eyes. For the first time, I didn't feel anger toward her, only pity. As we drove away, the red roofs of the village faded behind us. My heart pounded with both fear and excitement. I had never been to Lagos. Everything I owned fit inside one small nylon bag, yet beside me sat a man whose name once commanded boardrooms. Hours later, skyscrapers began to rise before my eyes like mountains. Cars honked endlessly, people hurried across wide roads, and the air smelled of fuel and ambition. Obinna looked out the window, silent but determined. When we reached a tall glass building, he turned to me. "This was mine," he said quietly. The sign outside read Nadazi Holdings Limited. My stomach fluttered. This was no ordinary place. We entered through the lobby, and heads turned immediately. Security guards straightened at the sight of him. A woman behind the reception desk gasped. "Sir, you're alive?" Obinna gave a faint smile. Did they expect otherwise? Within minutes, we were in the top-floor boardroom. A group of men sat around a long table. Among them, a man who looked strikingly like Obinna but younger, sharper, and colder. "Brother," Obinna said evenly, stepping forward. "Did you miss me?" The man froze. His face paled as though he'd seen a ghost. "Obinna, you're supposed to be dead." "I was dead," Obinna said softly. "Dead to greed, betrayal, and false love. But now, I'm alive again." The room fell silent. Chaik stammered, trying to explain, but Obinna's lawyer entered, placing thick folders on the table. "All evidence of forgery and illegal transfers," he announced. "It's over, Mr. Chaik." When security escorted his brother out, Obinna turned to me. "You see, Amarachi, truth never loses its way home." I didn't know when tears began rolling down my cheeks. Everything felt like a dream. The man who once drank palm wine under a tree now stood in a suit that fit like destiny. Yet, through all the glamour around him, he still looked at me the same way, like the woman who saw him before the world did. Days later, he officially reclaimed his company. Reporters flooded the place, calling him the disguised billionaire. I watched quietly, unsure where I fit in this new life. That evening, he took my hand and led me to the balcony overlooking the city lights. "You're afraid," he said gently. I nodded. "I don't belong here. I'm just a village girl." He smiled. "You belong wherever I am. You gave me life when I had nothing. Now it's my turn to give you everything." His words melted the last wall around my heart. For the first time, I saw not a billionaire or a drunkard, but a man who had been broken and healed by love. Months passed. We moved into a quiet house away from the city noise. Sometimes, we'd sit together in the garden, laughing about how fate had played its strange game. One evening, Obinna looked at me and said, "If your stepmother hadn't been cruel, we'd never have met." I smiled, holding his hand. Then maybe her cruelty was the road to my blessing. And as the sun dipped behind the horizon, I realized my story, once filled with pain and shame, had become a tale of grace, patience, and the strange mercy of destiny. Please, kindly hit the subscribe button, like this video and share. This means a lot to us. Thank you for watching.